Young nurse called a billionaire and said your daughter is lying unconscious on the street. What happened next shook him. The Manhattan sidewalk was a blur of briefcases, honking taxis, and a sky slowly draining into dusk. Rush hour had arrived in full force, impatient footsteps and clipped conversations rising between buildings. Natalie Reed, 26, in navy blue scrubs and white sneakers, weaved through the crowd, a tired yet steady rhythm in her stride. Her long blonde hair was pulled into a loose ponytail beneath her jacket hood, and her ID badge bounced softly against her chest with every step. Her shift at St. Vincent's pediatric ward had just ended. 12 hours, 2 emergencies, and a spilled apple juice on her scrubs. She just wanted to get home, shower, and fall into bed. Until she saw her, near the corner of 64th and Lexington, right beside the crosswalk. A tiny figure had crumpled to the pavement, unnoticed, or worse, ignored. A little girl, no older than 3. Natalie's body moved before her mind caught up. She dropped her tote bag, rushed over, and dropped to her knees. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" The girl's skin was pale, her lips tinged faintly blue. Her breathing was fast, shallow, limbs twitching slightly. Natalie scanned quickly. No blood, no trauma, no visible injuries. But she recognized the signs. Hypoglycemic episode, low blood sugar, combined with possible panic-induced hyperventilation. The girl was having a mild seizure. She reached into her coat pocket, pulling out the emergency ginger candy she always kept for patients. Unwrapping it quickly, she coaxed it between the girl's lips, rubbing her back gently. "You're okay, baby. I've got you." The little girl didn't respond, but the convulsions slowed. Natalie gently cradled her into her lap, one hand supporting the back of her head, the other soothing small circles along her spine. She began to hum softly, an old lullaby her foster mother used to sing. The world around them didn't stop. People kept walking, their eyes skimming past as if it were just another New York moment to avoid. Natalie tuned them out. She reached into the girl's coat pocket, searching for any form of identification. Her fingers found a small, neatly folded piece of paper. In block letters it read, "Ava Welles. In case of emergency, call this number." Below the words was a handwritten string of digits, a phone number. Natalie didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone with one hand and began to dial. 1 ring, 2. Then, "Who is this?" The voice was sharp, low, and controlled. "I'm a nurse. I found a little girl, Ava, unconscious near Lexington and 64th. She's awake now, but disoriented. I think it was a hypoglycemic seizure. Don't move. Stay with her. I'm coming." Click. No name. No questions. Just a command and a dial tone. Natalie blinked at the abruptness, then glanced down. Ava's small fingers had curled tightly around her thumb. She was trembling but conscious now, her eyes glazed with tears, but fixed on Natalie's face. "It's okay, sweetheart. Someone's coming for you," Natalie whispered. She rocked slightly, humming again as the girl's breathing slowed. 17 minutes later, a sleek black Bentley glided to a stop at the curb. The sirens of Manhattan faded into a hum behind them. Natalie crouched beside the little girl on the sidewalk, one arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders as Ava leaned into her chest. Her breathing had steadied. The color had returned to her cheeks. It was only now, in the lull, that Natalie allowed herself to look up. The man who had just arrived stood motionless, his tall figure casting a long shadow over the concrete. Grayson Wells. His name hadn't been spoken, but it was etched into every headline, every finance article, every magazine cover over the past 5 years. He was even more intense in person, expensive suit tailored to precision, jaw sharp, eyes colder than the December wind. But as he looked down at Ava, something in his posture cracked. His voice, though calm, wavered. "Is she all right?" "She's stable now," Natalie said softly. She went into mild hypoglycemic shock, likely hadn't eaten for hours. Combined with emotional distress and exhaustion, it triggered panic and collapse. "She's okay, but she needs rest. Water. Food." Grayson's lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind them, his security team kept a respectful distance. No one interrupted. Natalie carefully adjusted Ava's coat and continued gently. She must have been crying for a while. Her tear ducts were dry. And her shoes. She nodded toward the child's pink flats. Worn thin. She must have walked blocks. She wasn't supposed to be alone, he muttered. No explanation followed. Just a clenched jaw and a deep inhale that failed to steady him. But the truth was beginning to reveal itself. Quietly, painfully. Earlier that afternoon, the car had been parked near Madison. The nanny had left briefly to grab coffee, assuming Ava was still asleep in the back seat. The doors hadn't locked properly. The girl had woken up alone, frightened, and wandered into the crowd. It did not take long for hunger to strike, or panic, or silence. Grayson took a step forward, reaching for Ava, but the girl, still clinging to Natalie's jacket, whimpered. "Daddy," she whispered, barely audible, but she didn't let go of Natalie. Natalie gave a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay, he's here." Gently, she began to loosen the girl's fingers from her coat sleeve, placing Ava's hand in her father's. She looked up at Grayson then. Their eyes met fully for the first time. Something about hers made him hesitate. No fear, no awe, just clear, steady compassion. He reached into his coat, pulled out a slim money clip, and offered her a folded bill. She shook her head almost instantly. "I didn't stop to be paid." "Then take it as gratitude," he said. His voice was cool, controlled, like a man who had never heard no. Natalie's eyes didn't flinch. "I don't need your money. Just make sure she eats something. And don't leave her alone." She stood slowly, brushing her knees. "I have to get going." Ava's hand reached again, sleepily. "Don't go." Natalie knelt one last time. "You're safe now, sweetheart. Your daddy's here." The girl closed her eyes. Natalie rose and took a step back. For a moment, Grayson said nothing. He watched her turn, that blonde hair catching the gold light of sunset as she blended back into the flow of the city, boots steady on the pavement. She didn't look back, and he couldn't stop watching her go. She walked 6 blocks before she exhaled. Her hands were still shaking slightly, not from fear, but from that familiar, echoing weight that always followed moments like these. Moments when the world gave you a choice: walk by or kneel down. Natalie Reed had chosen to kneel, just like she had when she was 10 years old, and her foster sister collapsed on a public bench, and no one stopped to help, not even when Natalie screamed. That memory never left her. It had followed her through every foster home, every job, every exam in nursing school. That is why she did not hesitate today. Because she knew what it felt like to be invisible. Grayson sat inside the back seat of his Bentley, Ava asleep on his chest, her tiny hand curled around his lapel. The car didn't move yet. He stared out the window at the spot she had disappeared. The nurse, the girl with the honey-colored hair and fire in her voice. She had walked away from money, away from him. She had looked him in the eye, not as a billionaire, not as a headline, but as a father. And now, for the first time in half a year, his daughter was asleep, peacefully, trustingly. He looked down at her, then back out into the street. For a man who believed everyone wanted something, he could not understand what it meant when someone wanted nothing. But something in his chest shifted, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel so cold. Returning to his vast estate overlooking the Hudson, Grayson stepped into a house that felt as silent and lifeless as ever, except this time, something was missing. Ava would not eat. She would not sleep. Grayson stood outside her room in the sprawling glass-walled estate overlooking the Hudson, watching through the baby monitor. His daughter sat curled up in bed, her arms wrapped tightly around a small stuffed bear. The same bear she had clutched while lying unconscious in a stranger's arms 2 days ago. "Miss Natalie," she whispered again. Her voice was hoarse, small. "Where's Miss Natalie?" The nanny had tried everything, singing, new toys, her favorite cartoons. Nothing worked. Ava turned her face away and said nothing. At first, Grayson assumed it would pass. Ava had tantrums before, but this wasn't defiance. It was grief. Grayson stared at the untouched bowl of oatmeal on the tray, cold now, like everything else in the house. That night, alone in his office, Grayson pulled out his phone and scrolled through his recent calls. He paused on an unknown number, an outgoing call from 2 days ago, the one that changed everything. He hesitated, then tapped it. Natalie was rinsing out a coffee mug in her small studio apartment in Queens when the call came through. Unknown number. She nearly let it go to voicemail until something in her chest pulled her thumb toward accept. "Hello? It's Grayson Wells." There was a pause. The name alone could have shaken most people. It didn't rattle her. "Yes?" He cleared his throat. His voice was steady, clipped, but there was something unfamiliar behind it. Strained, almost human. "She won't eat, she won't sleep. She keeps asking for you." Natalie blinked. "Ava?" "Yes." Another pause. "I'm not calling to ask you to take a job," he added quickly. "I know you're not interested in money. What are you asking then?" He hesitated. Then, "I'm asking if you'd consider coming, just for a few days. She trusts you, and frankly, I don't know what else to do." Natalie closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered Ava's tiny hand gripping hers. The way her heartbeat slowed when Natalie sang to her. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll come, but only for Ava." The estate was colder than Natalie expected. Not in temperature, but in soul. Clean marble floors, chrome accents, floor-to-ceiling windows with views that seemed to swallow the city. Everything gleamed. Everything was silent. No laughter, no warmth. Until Ava saw her. The little girl ran across the hallway barefoot, nearly tripping over her own feet. "Miss Natalie," she squealed, flinging her arms around Natalie's legs. Natalie knelt down, and Ava buried her face into her neck. It was the first time she had smiled in days. Behind them, Grayson stood quietly, watching the scene unfold. His eyes, usually unreadable, flickered with something like awe. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter than before. Natalie nodded, standing up with Ava still clinging to her. "I'm only here for a few days, until she's okay again." "I understand." As the days passed, the house began to change. Ava laughed more, talked more. She insisted Natalie read bedtime stories, and only Natalie. She demanded they eat together in the kitchen, instead of her usual tray meals in her room. She asked Natalie to sit beside her during her cartoons. Grayson watched from the edges, unfamiliar with this version of his home. One morning, Natalie found Ava sitting on the marble floor, drawing with crayons, something Grayson hadn't seen her do in 6 months. "You're good with her," he said from the doorway. "She's easy to love," Natalie replied without looking up. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "You're different." Natalie glanced up. "From what?" "Everyone who walks into this house," he said. "They all want something." She smiled faintly. "I didn't walk into this house. You invited me, and I still don't want anything." That made him pause. She stood and brushed off her jeans. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Ava wants pancakes, and apparently she thinks I'm a world-class chef." As she walked past him, their shoulders brushed. Neither of them said a word, but something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet knowing. She was the first warmth that had entered this house in a very long time, and he wasn't sure he wanted her to leave. The first night Natalie stayed at the Wells estate, she didn't unpack. She told herself it was temporary, a few days, just until Ava settled. But by bedtime, the little girl had already curled up beside her on the plush guest bed, tiny fingers gripping Natalie's sleeve like it was a lifeline. Down the hall, Grayson stood outside the door, the soft cadence of Natalie's voice drifting through the crack. She was telling Ava a story, something about a brave rabbit and a lost compass, and the way she wove the words, gentle and musical, made even the walls seem warmer. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but he didn't walk away either. The next morning, Grayson entered the kitchen at 7 a.m., half expecting to find Ava grumpy and refusing breakfast as usual. Instead, he saw her sitting at the counter, legs swinging, laughing while Natalie flipped pancakes, lopsided and uneven, but steaming and real. "She says these are better than the chef's," Natalie said, half apologizing, catching his raised brow. Ava grinned. "They taste like hugs." Grayson didn't say anything, but something tugged in his chest. Later that day, Natalie got her shirt caught in the guest room door. Cheap fabric and antique doorknobs were a dangerous combination. Grayson happened to walk by just as she was struggling, half twisted, one hand behind her back trying to free herself. "Need help?" he asked, amused. "I've got it," she muttered, cheeks pink. He stepped forward anyway, carefully untangling the fabric. His fingers brushed against hers, just briefly, but it was enough to make both of them pause. The air stilled. Her eyes flicked up, wide, uncertain. He stepped back. "Dora's the jealous type," he said awkwardly, before walking off. That night, Ava refused to eat dinner unless Miss Natalie joined them. When the housekeeper tried to serve Ava separately, the girl pushed her plate away with crossed arms. "Family eats together," she declared. Grayson looked at Natalie. "I suppose that's non-negotiable." So they sat, 3 plates, 1 table, no suits, no silence. Natalie tried to keep it light, commenting on the artwork. Grayson, surprising even himself, admitted one piece was upside down for 6 months before he noticed. Ava giggled, Natalie laughed. And then, it happened. In the middle of chewing a bite of mashed potatoes, Ava looked up and said, plain and simple, "I want to live here forever, if Natalie stays." The fork froze in Grayson's hand. Natalie blinked. "I mean it," Ava added, eyes bright. "This house feels happy now." Grayson looked across the table. Natalie didn't smile with triumph or surprise, just something softer. Understanding. She reached for Ava's hand and gave it a little squeeze. "She makes me feel like Mommy used to," Ava whispered. That night, when Ava was asleep and Natalie stood in the hallway brushing lint off her shirt, Grayson finally spoke. "I don't know what you're doing," he said quietly. Natalie turned. "Do you want me to stop?" He shook his head. "No, I'm just not used to it." "To what?" "The quiet being filled with something other than loneliness." Natalie's eyes softened. "I'm not here to replace anyone," she said. "I know." She hesitated. "But sometimes, people walk into our lives and remind us what feeling alive looks like." He didn't reply, just nodded. Once. Behind them, Ava stirred in her sleep. And for the first time in months, the Wells estate did not feel like a museum of grief. It felt like a home. It started with a laugh. Ava had slipped out onto the balcony just after lunch. The sky had shifted suddenly, dark clouds rolling in like a curtain being drawn. A burst of spring rain had poured over Manhattan, cool and chaotic. Ava, barefoot and spinning in her pink dress, shrieked with delight. By the time Natalie found her, she was soaked through, cheeks flushed, hair sticking to her face. "Ava," Natalie cried, rushing forward with a towel. "Sweetheart, you'll get sick." The girl only giggled. But by nightfall, the fever had set in. She shivered beneath layers of blankets, her tiny body curling in discomfort. Her forehead was burning. Her breathing grew shallow, uneven. Natalie stayed at her side, pressing cool cloths to her skin, whispering softly, checking vitals every hour. She prepared a lukewarm bath to lower the temperature, coaxed small sips of water into Ava's mouth, and rubbed her back gently until the child fell into a restless sleep. Grayson had come storming into the room when he heard Ava was sick. She was on the balcony. His voice was sharp, too loud. He turned on the young nanny with icy fury. "You let her out there alone? Are you completely incapable of—" "Grayson." Natalie's tone cut clean through the tension. He turned, startled. "Yelling won't help bring her fever down," she said. "Calm but firm. If you want to help her lower your voice, she needs to feel safe right now." For a second, he looked like he might argue, his jaw clenched. But then, without a word, he turned and left the room, the door closing behind him with a soft but final click. Natalie stayed, all night. She didn't sleep. She dozed in a chair beside Ava's bed, waking every 20 minutes to check her temperature, to change the compress, to whisper comfort. It was almost midnight when the fever finally broke. Ava's breathing steadied, her cheeks cooled, her small fingers clutched Natalie's in sleep. Natalie exhaled, exhausted, relieved. She rose quietly, tucked the blanket around Ava, and stepped out into the dim hallway. The house was still, but as she passed the music room, something caught her ear, an odd, broken sound. She stopped. Inside, Grayson sat slumped at the grand piano, not playing, just sitting. His head rested against the keys, the soft, discordant notes pressing under his weight. His shoulders shook, silent but raw. He did not hear her approach. Natalie stood there, watching the man no one ever saw vulnerable. The man the world knew as a tech titan, untouchable, precise, folded into himself, unraveling. She didn't speak. She simply stepped forward and rested her hand gently on his shoulder. His breath caught. He didn't look up, but he whispered, his voice cracked and low, "I do not know how to be a father." A beat. I can run billion-dollar meetings, negotiate contracts that shape markets, but I look at her, and I freeze. She deserves someone better. Natalie knelt slightly, so they were eye level. "You are not a bad father, Grayson," she said softly. "You are just grieving, and maybe forgetting that she is grieving too." That sentence landed like a quiet bell in a cathedral, soft but impossible to ignore. He finally looked up at her. His eyes were red, tired, wide with something like realization, like gratitude. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was tender. A new kind of understanding passed through it. Grayson didn't try to apologize. Natalie didn't ask him to. Some things were better carried in silence. And that night, for the first time since his wife's funeral, Grayson Wells allowed someone to see the storm inside him. And for the first time, he did not weather it alone. It started with a click. One harmless photo, taken on a sunny afternoon outside a local grocery store. Natalie was pushing the cart. Ava sat inside, wearing heart-shaped sunglasses and giggling. Grayson walked beside them, holding a brown paper bag and laughing at something Ava had said. To anyone who knew them, it was an ordinary moment. To the internet, it was something else entirely. The next morning, headlines exploded across entertainment sites and social media feeds. Tech billionaire's new flame? Who is the blonde nurse spotted with Grayson Wells? From scrubs to silk sheets, inside the life of Natalie Reed. Cinderella 2, billionaire's nanny or girlfriend? Natalie first saw the articles while scrolling through her phone on her break at the clinic. She stared in disbelief. Her inbox was flooded. Her phone rang with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. By noon, co-workers were whispering behind her back. She caught fragments in the hallway. Is it true? She's dating him for real? Smart girl, landing a guy like that. At the preschool, Ava wasn't spared either. Another child had repeated something their parents said at home, something cruel, something Natalie never got the full version of, but enough for Ava to come home quiet, eyes down, asking, "Is it bad that I love Natalie?"